is up, guys? Welcome to the Being Beautifully Honest podcast and channel. Thanks for being here, being subbed. If you're not, hit the button, and if you're listening on YouTube, hit the like. It's like walking in the room and hitting that light switch. Let's brighten up the place and get into the politics and BS. So I absolutely am loving this moment, and my hope and prayer is that people don't let this just be a moment. You have to continue to show forth your aggression in this moment, because if you don't believe that Trump and his MAGA cronies are being aggressive with trying to take this country into a place where it's rolling the clock backwards on so many things that have been achieved for the sake of the thing that they hate, diversity, equity, and inclusion, because they want to be superior and supreme, then I don't know what you are thinking, but you better wake up and use that. I'm going to use that word that they hate. You better be woke. You better not stay asleep. You better be woke. And so I'm loving this moment because Donald Trump, he has had the tables turned on him and he can't stand it. And I love when things are happening that he hates. All right. Because And that's why Melania sleeps in another wing of Mar-a-Lago, if she's even staying at Mar-a-Lago, right? Because she probably has another place in West Palm Beach, Florida that she stays in. She may not even be living in Mar-a-Lago. I don't even think Mar-a-Lago is big enough for her to be in another wing of that place and be there with him. Because trust and believe, she cannot stand that man, okay? She can't stand her husband. She's not a victim. I'm not saying I feel sorry for her, but I'm just stating the obvious. She can't stand him, all right? She refused to kiss him at the RNC convention. She had the check clear for her to come to the convention, but in terms of her kissing him, that was not in the contract. That was not in the agreement. There wasn't a payment made for that exchange, so she did not go down for that. But I digress. I love this because Joe Biden, even though when I got the news on Sunday afternoon that he had withdrawn his bid for re-election for the moment, this has taken away his steam because it's put the focus on not just on Joe Biden and the Democratic run, but it's taken the focus off of Joe Biden being the old man in the room and placing the focus on him being the old, crazy, narcissistic, psychopath dictator wannabe in the room. And so I want to play this this is from Rachel Maddow, because she's breaking down how the tables have been flipped on Donald Trump and how Joe Biden stole his moment, stole his momentum, stole the attention that he was so craving and loving after this situation. That's what I'm going to call it. This situation that happened at the rally that has these ridiculous followers, worshipers of Donald Trump walking around with these gauze bandages taped to their ears in solidarity to this man who refuses to release his medical records to show what really happened, what's really going on, but allowing the White House doctor who did not treat him to write a letter regarding what happened to him. Whatever. I'm going to go ahead and play this.
What a day in history. President Joe Biden making American history with an act of profound political and personal sacrifice. 3.5 years into his presidency, President Joe Biden stepping down from his re-election bid in favor of his Vice President Kamala Harris. I've been processing this for 5 hours already, and it still gives me chills to say it. In the instant he announced it at 1:46 p.m. this afternoon, everything changed. Everything changed. The Democratic Party instantly ends It's internal war, this emotional, intense, harrowing fight that has torn the party apart for the past 3.5 weeks, that is over in an instant. The expectation among Democrats, which was being voiced more and more openly in recent days, the expectation that the Democratic Party was in for a historic wipeout in November, with not just the White House in danger, but the House and the Senate in danger as well, that expectation evaporates also in an instant. With President Biden voicing a strong and unequivocal endorsement of his Vice President, Kamala Harris, with Vice President Harris confirming immediately that she is running, saying we have 107 days until Election Day. Together we will fight and together we will win, with no resulting ambiguity about who will be the Democratic Party's nominee and what is the task at hand for that nominee and for the party. The little scratchy, papery sound you're hearing in the distance? That's every Democratic donor in the country writing the biggest check they have ever written in American politics. In an instant, the old era is over and the new era is here. It is go time. Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump in 2020 in an election in which Trump refused to accept the result and tried to stay in power by the use of violent force. Trump has since been convicted of 34 felonies and is awaiting sentencing on those charges. He's facing up to 4 years in prison. He has been found liable for committing sexual assault. He owes literally hundreds of millions of dollars in civil penalties for massive fraud at his business. His business has been found criminally guilty of business fraud, and he owes hundreds of millions of dollars in a civil fraud case. He is the subject of a felony RICO indictment in the state of Georgia. He is also facing federal criminal charges. He is now 78 years old and gives speeches of such rambling incoherence that even his most ardent superfans start wandering off or checking their phones by the time he starts talking about sharks and shower heads and how beautiful you would think he looks if he were to take his clothes off. He just picked a 39-year-old running mate who most Americans do not know and who has basically no record in public service. As people are Googling Donald Trump's new unknown running mate, the first thing most of them are learning about him is that he is deeply committed to a nationwide ban on abortion. Nationwide. He is the protege of an eccentric right-wing tech billionaire who is against women having the right to vote and who says he's against democracy. The right-wing groups that have championed this guy for Trump's running mate are the authors of the Project 2025 policy blueprint you have heard so much about. The policy blueprint for what the Republicans plan to do if they do succeed in getting Trump and now Vance back into the White House. A national abortion ban is just the start. Try cracking down on birth control and fertility treatment. Try banning pornography. Try defunding the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. Say goodbye to the Department of Education and the Environmental Protection Agency and the FDA. Really, the Food and Drug Administration. Because who among us doesn't want to think we're buying aspirin, but it turns out to be rat poison? Republicans and Trump himself had been uncharacteristically disciplined when it came to commenting on this very difficult knockdown, drag-out fight within the Democratic Party over these last few weeks. The concerns about President Biden showing his age. Republicans were being very reticent, very disciplined about not talking about that because they were crossing their fingers and hoping that President Biden would stay in. Expecting that President Biden was going to stay in, they were measuring the drapes, looking at the polls and bragging about their sure, absolutely guaranteed victory. What Trump's pollster last week said was between 20 and 25 different paths to victory in the electoral map. He said after we got to about 25 different paths to victory, we stopped counting. They have been so sure. President Biden, perhaps cannily, waiting until the supremely self-confident Republican side locked in their ticket. Waiting until Trump picked the most radical, the most ideologically extreme, and even eccentric choice for his running mate. Waited until that was locked in, and then today, 1:46 p.m., boom. Today, Donald Trump's remarkable recent run of political good luck came to an end with a crash. The old man in the race now is Donald Trump, 78 years old, and only occasionally coherent. With a record as president that is viewed by historians as the worst in the history of the country, a tenure that ended in violence. And he refuses to promise that there won't be more violence to come from his supporters. He is the old man in the race by a mile. Dragging that legacy from what happened the last time he was in office, and now a national abortion ban, and maybe his own prison sentence with him to the polls. And as of today, we know that his opponent will not be a man older than him. As of today, we know his opponent will be a 59-year-old former prosecutor, attorney general, U.S. senator, and vice president to Joe Biden, who cemented his legacy today with a decision that will go down in history as one of the most selfless, patriotic sacrifices of any sitting president ever. 1:46 p.m. Joe Biden changed everything today in an instant.
So I'm going to read this from NBC News. Trump's remarkable recent run of political good luck has finally come to an end. He is now this old man in the presidential race, a 78-year-old who is only occasionally coherent. With a record as president that is viewed by historians as the worst in the history of the country, and a tenure that ended in violence, a man who refuses to promise there won't be more violence from his supporters in the future. Trump drags along with him not just the legacy of what happened the last time he was in office, but also the threat of a national abortion ban and a possible prison sentence that all heads with him to the polls. We now know Trump's opponent will not be a man older than him. His opponent will likely be a 59-year-old former prosecutor, attorney general, U.S. senator, and vice president to Joe Biden, who cemented his legacy with a decision that will go down in history as one of the most selfless, patriotic sacrifices of any sitting president ever. At 1:46 p.m. on a Sunday, Biden changed everything about this race. In an instant, the old era is over and the new era is here. It's go time. And I 100% am here for it. So you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for being here, liking, and subscribing. I'm Beth, just being beautifully honest. So until next time, I wanted to keep it brief, beautiful, and now I'm going to say bye.